Welcome to Writing Day 3 Assessments. The outcome for today is to complete the commentary for Task 3 Assessments. Guidelines for Task 1 and 2, you used argumentative writing. For Task 3, you'll use analytical writing. Show the impact your planning and teaching had on your focused learner. Give specific examples to support your answers. Make sure you answer the question. And show and tell how your assessments are aligned with learning objectives and are connected to effective teaching practices. Rubric 11, analyzing the focus learner's performance. An automatic one means there is significant lack of alignment between the learning goal, lesson objectives, daily assessment records, and/or the work sample for the focused learner. Specifically, the daily assessment records do not include data related to the lesson objectives, or the work sample is unrelated to the lesson objective and daily assessment records. Any lesson that lacks explicit operationally defined criteria gets an automatic 1. For level 3, the analysis draws upon knowledge of the focus learner and patterns of the following to understand progress toward all lesson objectives for the focus learner for the learning goal. 1. Strengths and errors. Note, if error prevention was successfully used to support student learning, a lack of errors should not be held against a candidate. Or, levels or types of support, including error prevention strategies like systematic instruction, simultaneous prompting, constant time delay. Prompt 1A. Identify the lesson objectives from the learning segment measured by each daily assessment record. State your objective for each lesson. Briefly describe each assessment that is logged on your daily assessment record. Briefly show the alignment between your lesson objective and the assessment, and always circle back to the goal. Prompt 1B. Describe any changes in the assessment related to the work sample, daily assessment records, and/or lesson objectives from what was described in the lesson plans, and explain why changes were made. If there were no changes from Task 1, then explicitly state that in one sentence. Here's an example of a change. In Lesson 2, the amount of picture shapes I had was a lot, and it took a long time to sort them all as one opportunity. I ended up using half the amount of shapes as one opportunity for the latter part of the lesson. I did this to keep the lesson from becoming too long and overwhelming for Larry. Prompt 1C. If the work sample for the learning goal is an excerpt from a video from Instruction Task 2, provide a timestamp reference here. If a video work sample includes more than one learner, clearly describe how the scorer can identify the focused learner, e.g., position, physical description, first words spoken by the focused learner whose work is portrayed. If your work sample is not a video, explicitly state that in one sentence. If your work sample is a video excerpt, cite the timestamp and describe the assessment. For example, clip 2, lesson 3:0:05. In this clip, Larry is asked to sort his objects by an attribute of his choice without any prompting. He begins by sorting by color. I ask him to tell me what he is doing. He responds ... Prompt 1D. Summarize the focus learner's progress toward the learning goal as reflected in the lesson objective. The summary can be presented in a table or described in several paragraphs. Create a simple chart summarizing your focus learner's progress for all lessons and then talk about the chart. Goal not met, goal met, or exceeded goal, then briefly explain the chart. For example, in lessons 1 and 2, Larry exceeded his learning objectives, getting 5 out of 5 in both lessons. In lesson 3, he was at 4 out of 5, but still exceeded his objective goal of 3 out of 5. Along with Larry exceeding his goals, he made great gains from his baseline data where he could identify how objects were sorted 26% of the time, even when given choices. With his low baseline score, I knew that Larry was going to need to be supported, especially when it came to sorting by shape and size. Starting him with a lot of supports and slowly releasing them was a result of Larry's success. With minimal supports, Larry can sort by an attribute and explain his reasoning 83% of the time. Prompt 1E. Analyze the focus learner's performance based on strengths, what he or she appears to understand or do well, and needs, where he/she continues to struggle or he/she needs greater challenge. Include any error analysis. Types or levels of planned support provided to the focus learner. For example, based on my data and observations, Larry is most confident in sorting by color as he requires no prompting and can explain his group's 5 out of 5 opportunities. Although his skills have increased in comparison to the baseline data, Larry still struggles most in sorting by size, as he requires the most support and prompting to be successful. In the baseline, Larry identified objects, sorted by size, 0 out of 5 opportunities when given options. Prompt 1F. Based on the focus learner's performance, explain how the planned supports you used did or did not impact learning and provide access to the content. Cite evidence from the baseline data, daily assessment records, and work sample as needed to clarify or illustrate your summary and analysis. First, list all of the supports you used in your learning segment. Show the link between your supports and greater learning outcomes. Circle back to the learning goal. What were the most effective supports and why? Cite the assessment results and baseline data as proof. Any supports that were ineffective, which ones and why? Exemplar 1. He had many supports in Lesson 2, which is why he was successful. He went from 0 out of 1 in Lesson 3 with minimal support, and visuals were added to help him get to 1 out of 2. There was a lot of support provided to Larry to aid in his success. While the data show progress from baseline sorting skills at 26% to the end of the learning segment where sorting skills were 83%, this segment alone may not be the best indication of Larry's sorting abilities because of the high level of planned supports, even though there was a gradual release across lessons. Here's an exemplar that on rubric 11 earned a score of 3. Rubric 12, using feedback to guide further learning. Prompts 2A and B. The automatic one is the feedback contains significant inaccuracies that will misdirect students in significant ways. Feedback is severely inappropriate for the learner's chronological age and/or developmental level. At level 3, detailed feedback related to the learning goal either addresses needs or reinforces strengths. Detailed feedback is specific. That is, it identifies what is correct or incorrect about a learner's response and guides the learner to understand how to respond correctly. Options for feedback are feedback's written directly on the work sample, or it's included in a video work sample of no more than 2 minutes from task 2, just timestamp it, or a new video no more than 3 minutes, or audio of no more than 3 minutes. For prompt 2A, refer to the specific evidence of submitted feedback to support your explanations. Identify the form in which you submitted your evidence of feedback for the focus learner. Delete choices that do not apply. This should be written directly on a work sample or included in a video work sample. Could be in an audio file or in a video clip from instruction task 2, provide the timestamp reference, or a separate video clip. If the video feedback occurs in a group context, clearly describe how the scorer can identify the focus learner, e.g. position, physical description. This is easy to just simply delete the populated prompts that don't apply and write a short sentence. For prompt 2B, explain how feedback, including error prevention, provided to the focus learner addresses his, her, or their individual strengths and continuing needs relative to the learning goal. Here is a video example. The feedback from the clip above shows what Larry did correctly and expands on that correct response to build his knowledge even more. Clip 1, Lesson 2. 2 minutes, 13 seconds. In this clip, I ask Larry what it is that we are going to do, and he says colors. So I repeat again in a different tone of voice to show that I was looking for a different answer. When he's unable to get the answer, I provide him with the first sound to get him started and repeat his then correct answer in an excited voice and build on it by using it with the communication skill. Prompting. Prompt 2B. If your feedback is on a work sample, share specific feedback you wrote on the work sample and cite the lesson number. Make sure you address strengths and weaknesses. Show the alignment of your feedback to the learning goal. Here's an example of a rubric 12 that earned a score of 2.5. Note the description here is general rather than specific. On rubric 13, it's learner understanding and use of feedback. There's no automatic one. Level 3 means the candidate provides a description of how the focus learner will understand or use feedback related to the learning goal. The description needs to relate to the feedback given to the focus learner. Understand means that you're going over problems with errors. Using could mean they're revising the student is revising problems or correcting errors using the feedback that you gave. For prompt 2C, how did or will you support the focus learner to understand and use the feedback on both strengths and needs related to the learning goal within the learning segment or in subsequent learning tasks? Make it clear as to how your focus learner will understand and use feedback. Cite specific examples of what you will do and address strengths and needs. Examples: you might meet one-on-one to discuss feedback, reteach so the focus learner can redo and revise by applying the feedback, conferencing, make plans to apply the feedback to future lessons and give specific details of how, when, what, and where. Here's an example for prompt 2C. I supported the focus learner to understand and use his feedback on both his strengths and needs by conferencing with him to go over the written feedback on his assessments. In addition, after lesson 2, I shared with him the data from the assessment record that correlated the number of problems he solved correctly to his use of the number line. Here's an exemplar. On rubric 13, this earned a score of 2. Note, it's a vague explanation of how the focus learner will understand or use feedback. Rubric 14, explaining the focus learner's use of communication. Prompts 3A to C. This rubric is paired with number 4 from task 1, so make sure that your response to prompt 4A is aligned with what you planned for in task 1. There's no details for an automatic 1. For a level 3 score, the candidate explains how the focus learner used or attempted to use the identified expressive or receptive communication skill to participate in learning tasks and or demonstrates learning related to the learning goal. The explanation corresponds to the specific evidence, timestamp, placed in a work sample, provided of actual use. Options for focus learners' use of the communication skill. This could be a video clip from task 2 where you mention the timestamp reference. It could be an additional video that you name communication use of no more than 5 minutes and provide timestamp references. Upload the video in task 3 part C. Could be a work sample, might be the one analyzed in task 3 or a different one. If it's a video work sample, provide timestamp references. For prompt 3A, explain the focus learner's use of the communication skill to participate in learning tasks or demonstrate learning related to the learning goal. Remind the reviewer or scorer of your identified communication skill and how it helped support the learning goal. Hint, look at task 1, prompt 4A and B. Is it expressive or receptive? Show evidence of where the focus learner practiced using the communication skill, and as always, circle it back to the learning goal. The exemplar is that Larry's communication skill is to use the phrase, I can sort by ... and explain why those objects are sorted together. Clip 2, lesson 3, 55. After sorting by color, Larry is telling me why those objects are sorted together by naming their different color groups. I needed to ask a guiding question to get him to explain his groups. He then uses the communication phrase after I support him by getting him started saying, I, where he follows with, I can sort by color. For prompt 3B, explain the extent to which the plan supports for the expressive or receptive communication skill built on the learner's strengths and or needs related to participating in the learning tasks or demonstrating learning related to the learning goal. Identified your plan's support for the communication skill. Why did you select those supports? Talk about how they were selected to build the strengths and or needs related to the learning goal. Share specific examples from the work sample, video, or audio samples. For example, I was aware that Larry struggles with verbally expressing his answers and knowledge, and so I knew that I needed to teach him how to do it by first giving him a simple phrase, I can sort by, as a starting point in expressing what he did each time. The repetition and simplicity built on Larry's needs while also being a good support to get him started. He could use more time to think about how he was going to explain why he grouped objects together like he did, rather than coming up with the words to express what he did. For prompt 3C, describe the plan supports you provide to help the focus learner generalize and or maintain the communication skill. Remind the reviewer of your plan support. Focus on capturing examples that support generalization and maintenance of the communication skill. For example, the circle tool was a plan support to help my focus learner maintain the learning goal and communication skill. It allowed him to have circumference, radius, and diameter information and formulas in one area. Not only does it show him what the formula in the note tool are for having a circle as its guide, but it keeps his tools in one spot. He will be able to use this tool at any time he has a question involving circles because it's easy to point out and it has all the necessary information. This will be useful for review, previews, and assessments when questions involving circles arise. Here's the exemplar on rubric 14. This earned a score of 3.5. On rubric 15, use assessment to inform instruction. Prompt 4A and B. No information for automatic 1. For level 3, the primary criterion is that next steps related to the learning goal follow from the analysis of the focus learner's performance during the learning segment and include general instructional strategies and or supports to improve or continue learning. The secondary criterion is the candidates refer to research or theory when describing the next steps. The connections between research or theory and the next steps are general rather than specific. For prompt 4A, consider what you know about the focus learner and the effectiveness of your instruction or intervention and the learning environment when designing next steps related to the learning goal. Consider all aspects of instruction, including planned supports, as appropriate. Connect your next steps to your analysis of the focus learner's performance. Based on your analysis of the focus learner's performance presented in the response to prompts 1D through F, describe the next steps for instruction to improve or continue learning. Connect your next steps to research and or theory, particularly as it relates to evidence-based practices. For example, Larry's IEP goal states Larry will sort, classify, and describe objects by their attributes, such as their size, shape, and color from 1 out of 5 to 4 out of 5 opportunities. And our learning goal that we focused on in correlated stating with minimal support, Larry will sort and describe objects by their attributes such as color, shape, size. Larry's learning goal is a step to help him reach his IEP goal. My next step would be to provide more meaningful engagement around Larry's learning goal to support a stronger, longer lasting learning and understanding. The research and theory by Craig and Lockhart in 1972 are guiding my next steps with Larry. Levels of processing, a framework for memory research, demonstrates how meaningful engagement, such as posing and answering meaningful questions about concepts, making analogies, or attempting to apply the concepts or theories to solve problems, leads to more elaborate, longer-lasting, stronger representation of knowledge. By forming more connections to related ideas, these activities increase the likelihood that students will be able to retrieve and use the concepts and skills when they are relevant. Prompt 4B, based on what the focus learner knows and can do, and your next steps, describe implications for the focus learner's IEP goal and/or curriculum. For example, as we continue the unit, I will continue to print out note sheets for him so he can be successful in the instruction. However, I plan to put fill in the blanks for the parts we've already covered, i.e. circle, so that he is following along and getting the most important concepts. This will also show me if he's maintaining the skills. Also, he'll be able to utilize his note tool, and if he refers to it, he would be working toward one of his benchmarks of his IEP goal. As problems that involve steps arise, I will continue to modify things so that steps are laid out so my focus learner can follow a step process that will help him in completing another benchmark of his IEP goal. As my focus learner continues to utilize his tools and gain self-determination, he will be not only successful but make gains in the classroom, but his IEP as well. There's another exemplar on rubric 15. It earned a score of 3.5. Before you submit your EdTPA, save yourself some time, use the evidence chart, page 46, right before the glossary of your handbook, as a checklist to make sure everything is in the proper format. Again, this saves you time in the long run. Double check your videos. Is the size sufficient? Are your videos sideways? Does the audio work? Be sure to convert all documents to PDFs. Give a hard copy of the video recording affirmation sheet signed by you and your cooperating teacher to Dr. Joswick, Dr. Owens, Dr. Rice, or Dr. Otis Wilborn. UWM does not need the actual consent forms. They'll belong to the school district. After you press send, congrats, you'll receive your results in 3 weeks. I will be available to support you in the submission process. In person, you can come to Endress Hall 399 between 9 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. on April 11th of 2019. You can always email me at joswick@uwm.edu.